Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the planning meeting for Vale of Glamorgan Council on Thursday, 21st of May 2026 at 4 o'clock. It's a hybrid meeting, as people will be aware. Little bit of housekeeping first, as usual. May I remind everyone present that this hybrid meeting of the Planning Committee is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please make sure that they mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function. If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by myself, please could they then turn on their camera to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by myself, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be both seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to my attention or that of Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of myself or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they're addressing the committee, then they should let the Chair or Democratic Officer know. So please could I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, our officers, public speakers, residents, and also to anyone watching the live meeting broadcast. So, moving on then to the agenda. First of all, apologies for absence. I understand Councillor Aviat is one. Do we have any other apologies for absence?
We've not had any others other than Councillor Aviat so far, Chair.
Okay, and I see no indication from anybody. Declarations of interest. Do any members of the committee have any declarations of interest to indicate, including lobbying or whatever? No, I see no hands. We come on to agenda item 3 then. Minutes of the meeting held on Thursday the 19th of March 2026. Can we accept these as a true record?
And I'm happy to move them, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll second that. Agenda item 4 for noting building regulations, applications and other building control matters determined by the Director under delegated powers.
I'm happy to move them, Chair.
I'll second that. Agenda item 5, planning applications determined by the Director under delegated powers.
I'm happy to move them, Chair.
Thank you very much, and I'll second again. So we come on to agenda item 6, which is appeals. Liam, I think, are you available to talk us through these? Liam.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, in terms of the appeals report, as members can see before them, there are a few new appeals and there are a couple of decisions in the report. So since producing the report, there's been a couple more appeal decisions that have come in. So those will be reported to the next meeting, both of which have been dismissed. So that's pleasing. In terms of the reports and decisions there in your papers, there are 2 decisions, as I say. They both relate to the same site, a site called Orchard Dean in Welsh St Donuts. Appeal decisions effectively in connection with an enforcement matter. One relates to an enforcement appeal decision as well as a retrospective plan application. So effectively there was a replacement building erected at the site and the landowner sought permission retrospectively. The council refused planning permission for what was sought, and then we followed that up with an enforcement notice. I think it might have been an item that was on committee for authorisation previously. So in terms of the enforcement appeal itself, that was allowed by the inspector. The inspector found the works did go beyond refurbishment, which was one of the claims of the appellant, in that they were refurbishing a previous building on site. But the inspector agreed with the council that it amounted to a new building, so a breach had occurred. However, planning permission was granted under ground A of the appeal, as the inspector considered the building was acceptable in planning terms. So he considered it had limited visual impact within a group of buildings there, and he felt that there was sufficient agricultural need, including use for sheep, lambing and hay storage. We disagreed with the extent of agricultural activity, and that was one of our grounds for refusal. So on the second appeal then, that he's considered in the same report, relates to the planning application, the earlier application that we refused. So that was also that was actually dismissed, interestingly, but this is because the application was submitted as a conversion. So the inspector concluded in that case that the extent of the rebuilding conflicted with our planning policies, which relate to conversions. So he effectively felt that the building was acceptable as a new agricultural building, but under policies related to conversion, it wouldn't be acceptable. So that explains the sort of different decision outcomes there, if you like. So yeah, it's disappointing in terms of the enforcement appeal, but yes, a matter of judgment that the inspector's taken on that one. So thank you for that, Chair. Any questions? Happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Does any member of the committee have any questions for Liam on that? I see no hands, so I assume not. In that case, we can now move on to agenda item 7, which is the trees, the delegated list. I think all these are for noting.
Happy to move them, Chair.
I'll second that. So now we come on to the planning applications proper. I'll remind members of the committee that we've received a number of matters arising on each of the 3 planning applications we got before us today. And hopefully you've read them all. So moving on to the first, that's 2022-00197 Oblique Pwll, Pwll Farm, St Donats, and Steve Butler. Please, if you could introduce this item for us.
Thank you, Chairman. If we could just have the slides up, please. So the application site, if we go to the next slide, relates to 2 parcels of land situated in Pwll Farm, which is sited to the north of the A48 as circled, which is east of Cowbridge and broadly south of Welsh St Donats. So the site itself is outside of any defined settlement boundary, and as such, for purposes of the LDP, is considered as countryside. If we go to the next slide, please. So 2 sites, the site circled, and then there's a smaller site to the north, but both sites have a mixed predictive agricultural grade of both 3A and 3B, and there are also areas of ancient woodland in close proximity to the application sites. The smaller site is located to the north of the main site. If we can go down to the next slide, please. So that's the larger site, and then the next slide shows the smaller site to the north. So if we could go to the next slide, please. The application is full planning permission for retrospective and proposed reprofiling of land and the proposed erection of farm buildings and associated works to site 1, which is the main site in front of you, and the rationalisation of the associated yard, which is known as site 6, which is the smaller site to the north, which is proposed to be returned to agricultural land. So site 1 is proposed location and erection of farm buildings. As you can see in front of you, the proposals include the erection of a grain store, a machinery store as a separate building, and also a silage pad, which effectively is just a concrete pad. So location to those, you can see them in front of you and form a sort of broad triangle. If we go to the next slides, please. So the I think that's the machinery store. That's approximately 42 meters by 18 meters in size, and approximately 9.8 meters to ridge. The building itself will be finished in a natural grey cement fibre sheets, concrete panels, and slate plastic sheeting for the walls. If we could go to the next slide, please. That's the so sorry, that was the larger building. So the building in front of you now is the grain store, which is the smaller building, which is 42 by 18 meters. Again, similar height to the ridge as the previous building. So the concrete, if we can go back to the site layout, please. Just one up again. Okay, we can just see the concrete slab, which is broadly 18 metres by 100 metres. Now that runs a continuation of the back of the main kind of machinery store building. So the application also seeks to retrospectively approve the reprofiling of land. So this site itself is in a bit of a dip within the wider holding. There have been some existing groundworks and alterations that have taken place, which are quite apparent on the light blue contour plan that you can see underneath the overlay. So following consultation, responses have been received from a number of internal and external consultees. A number of conditions have been requested on issues such as contamination and the importation of soils, etc. It's noted that Woodland Trust have objected to the proposals given the proximity of the Site 1 to ancient woodland. However, no neighbouring representations have been received. So in assessing the proposal, the application is no less considered acceptable in terms of both its principle, in terms of the need for the building, the impact on neighbours and trees, etc. So this is subject to conditions. In addition, we've got some just sort of coloured up drawings there. I think the next one shows, so everything is going to be on the main slab. You can get an idea of the length of the two buildings, the grain store building and the machinery store building, and also the silage clamp, which will be used for storage of haylage, etc., wrapped in bales, which is part of that would be derived from the wider holding. So just to conclude, really, so officers feel that the proposal as a whole is acceptable, but say given the size of the buildings, we feel this is a similar approach to that undertaken with prior notification applications, that we feel there's a need to ensure a timely completion and occupation of the buildings, and that they are retained for their stated agricultural use as proposed in the application, and that they would have to be removed within a specified time frame if they became vacant or they are not being used in line with the proposed use. There's also in the recommendation for the 106 would be that to limit any further groundworks or importation and exportation of any materials from the site. Further to the report that's been presented and the conditions, officers have had another look at the site, and we do feel that there's a need for further condition, which has not been raised to date, which is in respect of levels of the site and the building. So even though we've got some indication of levels, we feel that further information on levels would be required by condition. So just to conclude, the recommendation is to approve, subject to conditions listed and the additional condition aforementioned, subject to the applicant entering into a Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Steve. Right, as I said earlier, we do have speakers on this. One speaker, and that's Geraint John, who is speaking for the applicant as the representative. Mr. John, you know the rules.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. The application is, of course, recommended for approval, and in light of the detailed officer report and their comprehensive presentation just now, I'll keep this relatively brief. As you'll be aware, the proposal relates to the reprofiling of land, the erection of agricultural buildings, and the rationalisation and restoration of an existing yard. At its core, this is an application that seeks to support the ongoing viability and functionality of a considerable, circa 300-acre established rural enterprise. The supporting evidence clearly identifies that unusually for a farm of this scale, there are currently no adequate on-site buildings to support the operations. The proposed development therefore directly addresses these shortcomings, providing essential facilities. Officers have fully accepted this justification and have concluded that the proposals are appropriate, subject to usual safeguards. Officers have closely and carefully assessed the application, have found it to be acceptable in all respects. Officers have found that subject to conditions and a legal agreement, as described, the development is considered acceptable in terms of principle, scale, design and visual impact, as well as its impact on neighbours, highway safety, green infrastructure and biodiversity enhancement. Comments have been received from some residents in relation to perceived other operations and respect to the wider site. Each application has, of course, to be evaluated on its own individual merits. Notwithstanding this, it has been considered by officers that the nature of the proposals, the distance from outstanding applications, will ensure that there's no detrimental cumulative impact. The proposed legal agreement that will be entered into ensures that development is deliverable within defined phases, that the buildings are strictly used for the agricultural purposes proposed and justified, and the site is restored if these uses are not implemented. This provides both officers and members with an important safeguard and a high degree of certainty that the permission will be defined and regulated and will operate exactly as intended. To conclude, therefore, officers have identified that the proposal is a policy compliant scheme, accords with the development plan and national policy, all other material considerations, and addresses a clear operational need. In line with your officer's recommendation, therefore, I respectfully ask you as members to support the application and grant permission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. John. If you just hang on there a moment while I see if there are any points of clarification from members of the committee. Councillor Stallard.
Yes, I was just wondering, so the need for these large buildings is presumably quite new. Is that because of a change of farming methods or a change of crops, or?
In part, yes. As officers might have alluded to in the report, the current operation has farm machinery stored at Llandough, which is imported to the site in order to undertake the operation. That's obviously not sustainable and has that machinery on the highway network because it can't be stored on site. The client has also gone about significant agricultural land improvement with fertilisation and the like to improve its quality. That allows it to now grow quite considerable crops. In fact, I think numbers wise, it's circa, and this varies every year of course, but it's 500 tonnes of wheat and 400 tonnes of barley. Now presently, because without the buildings, they have to take a point in time price for that yield when at harvest time, because they have nowhere to store it. So effectively they're at a loss, not literally a loss, but they can't store it and sell it at the optimum time when the market is at its peak, and they can release it at the appropriate time. So at the moment, there's no real change to the operation. It's just that it will bring this on to site rather than it being off site elsewhere with all those kind of detrimental impacts.
Thank you, Councillor Stallard. Thank you, Mr. John. Are there any other further points of clarification?
Just a quick question,
Stallard again.
sorry. Unrelated. I think some of the work's already been carried out, as I understand it. Could you describe to me, the extent of the work already carried out? What would we have seen if we'd gone to visit today?
You'll see that the site sits on a slope, on a north-facing slope, in a hollow, as officers mentioned. So it's kind of towards the lowest part of the whole enterprise, centrally positioned as well. There was a planning permission some years back, I'm not suggesting that was still live, for buildings on this very site. So the earthworks have been undertaken to cut and reprofile that site, to basically cut the bank, level out the pad effectively on which these buildings will sit, enabling them to sit lower in the landscape. So that's effectively what you'd see on site presently. So it's that kind of enabling earthworking element that's taken place. No construction of the buildings or the laying of the slab has taken place as yet, pending the outcome of this application.
Thank you very much. Are there any further points of clarification from any members of the committee? I see no hands. Steve, is there anything you want to add before we start the discussion?
No, I think Mr. John's sort of provided some useful background there in terms of the need for the building. Obviously that's covered in the report, but no, nothing to add, Chairman. Thank you.
In that case, I can open up the meeting, open it for discussion by members if anyone has anything they would wish to contribute. I see no hands. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I would like to move officers' recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Payne. Councillor Payne, there's quite a delay on this at the moment.
She hasn't activated her mic, Chair.
Councillor Williams then.
I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Councillor Payne, you've still got your hand up. You don't seem to have activated your mic or camera.
It's now time.
You've gone now. That's been moved and seconded. Helen? Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, I was going to second officer's recommendation, but it didn't connect for some reason.
Well, for some reason,
Thank you.
yeah, your camera's not working either. In that case, that's been moved and seconded. Are there any members opposed to this? In that case, I don't see a need for a vote, and that application is approved. Thank you. Moving on then to the next application, which is 2025/00973/Pwll, Vale Car Sales, Leckwith Road, Llandough. And again, I think, Steve, you're introducing this.
Thank you, Chairman. I am indeed. Just while the slides come on, we've had matters rising notes on this application, which are comments from the agent in relation to the wording of our conditions. So we've had a look in detail, and see the agent, I think, has been questioning the number of conditions that we've sought to secure. Some of them we think we definitely need to retain, but some of them there's a degree of flexibility in terms of the wording. And then there's just another condition in relation to the submission of amended request to submit amended plans. I think it was either yesterday or the day before. So the application itself, if we could have the slides, please, relates to the...
Stephen, can I just come in? Is that okay, Chair?
What?
I just want to come in. So you're referring to matters arising, document number 4 and 5, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Right, okay, so the application is for the former car sales site, which is the site circled, which is located at the northern part of Llandough, which is a settlement and is adjacent to Leckwith Road. Next slide, please. The site itself, as you can see, is triangular in shape, is hard surfaced, and was formerly occupied by several single-storey outbuildings. The site is located, if we can go to next slide, please, there's a few sort of aerial photographs which give quite useful context. So the site is located opposite a recently completed affordable housing flatted development called Trem Hyfryd, located on the other side of Leckwith Road. And to the south of, if we can go to the other slide, please, the first slide, shows you that the cul-de-sac of Greenway Close is located, which is to the south, which comprises of a cul-de-sac of bungalows, and is separated from the application site by an access road, which serves the playing fields to the rear. So the site itself, if we can go to the next slide, sorry, the next aerial photograph, the previous one, that's one there. You can see the way that the site sort of addresses the woodland at the back. So the site is adjacent to, but not within, the Quarteralla Basin Special Landscape Area and Reservoir Wood Sink. Reservoir Wood, which is the backdrop of woodland, is listed within the National Inventory of Woodland. And the trees, if members can remember, were recently protected by way of a tree preservation order. So if we go to next slide, please. So this is a planning application for the development of 30 affordable flats, which includes access, parking, landscape planting and associated works. So in more detail, the 30 affordable units consist of 2-number 2-bed 3-person apartments and 28-number 1-bed 2-person apartments. So the proposal itself, as you can see, relates to effectively four separate blocks. So block 1 is the main block, which is positioned on the north part of the site and is sited adjacent to and parallel with Leckwith Road. Blocks 2, 3 and 4 are located along the eastern boundary, adjacent to the access road that serves the playing fields. If we can go to the next slide, I think it just pulls up a little bit of detail from the centre of the site. So the existing site has 2 access points from Leckwith Road, and these would be reduced to 1 amended access point, as you can see in front of you, which is positioned between blocks 1 and 2. The proposals include the provision of 26 number car parking spaces and 20 number cycle parking spaces, which I believe are split into 2 separate areas. Pockets of amenity space are also proposed throughout the site and also to the side of Block 1, which is adjacent to the woodland and Leckwith Road. Let's go to the next slide, please. In terms of the elevations, Block 1, which is the main sort of fronting block, it would have a footprint of approximately 36.5 by 14 metres. If you go to the next slide, Block 2 is the smaller block of 16.5 by 8.3, and then Block 3 is 24 metres long on the next slide, and then on the slide beyond that it's 17.8. And the smaller blocks have a similar kind of depth because they're all of a sort of relatively simple modular design. So all of the blocks will have 8.3 metre high ridges with 5.2 high eaves. Block 1, which is the frontage on the front, is stepped with ridge heights of 9.4 and 9.8 metres. Go to the next slide, please. So this is a bit of a CGI that was produced. It doesn't reflect the final scheme because the final scheme doesn't have trees along the frontage, because that area that is shown with the trees is actually within the adopted highway. But it generally shows the sort of the textures and finishes of the site. So the blocks themselves will be finished in a facing brick with plain concrete roof tiles, medium grey fascia and windows, black rainwater goods, etc. So the doors will be composite with glazed panels. With, as you can see, they've got smooth white sort of render surrounds to provide interest. So blocks 3 and 4 would have canopies, whilst blocks 1 and 2, which you can see in front of you, would have an aluminium canopy with a side panel, which gives a little bit of interest to the interest feature to the doors. Also on the frontage of these blocks, you can see at the first floor level a alternating coarse brick panel detail, which provides a degree of sort of texture to the frontages. So a boundary plan has been submitted with the application, which proposes to remove the existing palisade fence, which is around the perimeter of the site, with a so if we can go back to the site plan, please, site layout plan. A 2.1 metre high close boarded fence is proposed along the majority of the rear boundary of the site, and a 2.1 metre high black painted metal railings in the northwest part of the site and between blocks 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. A 1.1 metre high black painted ball top railings are proposed along the frontage between block 1 and the northern part of the site. So in terms of application itself, it's noted that there is currently no registered social landlord involved, either named as the applicant or named as a partner within the supporting information. But nevertheless, in terms of description, the application has been made as 100% affordable housing, and the agent has confirmed that they are committed to securing a registered social landlord for the site, and the application has been assessed on that basis. So comments have been received by many consultees, both external and internal, recommending the addition of conditions and informatives. The summary of the comments received is included in the committee report. To date, we have a total of 62 letters of objection, in addition to 6 further comments, neither in support or objecting to the application. The issues raised, in summary, include concerns regarding highway safety, parking provision, and the impact on existing parking issues. Comments and concerns are also raised in relation to scale and design and the impact on neighbouring properties, concerns on impact on drainage, flooding, and impact on wildlife, and comments regarding lack of services. The slide in front of you is just an indicative, just to show the block on the eastern side of the site and the proximity that they would have to the bungalows to the south in terms of distances, etc. So in terms of planning obligations, the contributions have been calculated in line with the exemptions within the SPG for 100% affordable housing scheme, which relate to 25 units or less. Obviously, this site is more than 25 units, so therefore 106 contributions would be required for those remaining units. So just to summarise the legal agreement requirements, part of the agreement, because the applicant is not an RSL, is to ensure that the scheme is only developed as a 100% affordable housing scheme by either one of the zoned registered social landlords or by the council itself. Secondly, then, to pay a sum of £11,500 to contribute towards the provision of sustainable transport facilities. Pay a sum of £13,340 for improving areas of open space. Public art provision at the rate of 16.6% of the 1% of build cost. And finally, £6,300 to contribute towards new or enhanced community facilities in the area. So in light of the above, the recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions listed and as detailed in any matters arising notes. And again, subject to the applicant entering into a Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. We now come on to the public speakers. I notice your hands up, Councillor Payne, but the proper time for that would be after the speakers. Councillor Carroll, as local ward member, you have indicated you want to speak. You have 5 minutes, starting from when you start.
Thank you, Chair, and I rise to speak in opposition to the application, and I do so in my capacity as the ward member. Members will note from the contents of the report that there is considerable concern regarding this application locally. 62 objections have been submitted by residents. From the conversations that I've had within the community, these concerns don't relate or amount to an outright opposition to the principle of developing this site. They relate specifically to the contents of this application, which is deemed unsuitable. There are several concerns regarding the density of the proposed development. From the report, it's noted that the development would amount to 100 dwellings per hectare. This is considerably higher than the minimum of 30 dwellings per hectare set by planning policy MD6. The excessive nature of this development and the high density will exacerbate existing problems within the village of Llandough. There are already well-known road traffic, safety and parking problems within the village. These largely amount to the result from the presence of Llandough Hospital within the ward, and these extend beyond the immediate vicinity of the hospital site and extend onto Leckwith Road itself. By building this number of dwellings with an insufficient number of car parking spaces provided, this will exacerbate these problems and make it worse. Not only will it lead to inconvenience for residents, the insufficient parking capacity and the impact this will have on on-street parking within the village will likely lead to road safety issues. There are already well-documented issues at the junction of Llandough Hill and Penlan Road. The police have raised concerns regarding vehicles parking in unsafe areas, and so we cannot afford to exacerbate this anymore by placing further pressures on parking capacity within Llandough. The density of the site also poses potential problems regarding the pressures that it will place on public services. GP provision and local school places are already under pressure within the Eastern Vale. The number of dwellings on this site without sufficient facilities and services being put in place in advance will make these matters worse. I would also draw members' attention to drainage concerns regarding this site. The site is partially located within an area of surface water flooding, as is referred to in page 73 of the report. There are well-known drainage issues in the vicinity on King George V playing fields, which is immediately adjacent to the site, and also along Leckwith Road itself. The flood risk that is posed to other properties bordering King George V playing fields necessitated the construction of a bund to hold water in the site. So this demonstrates the existing risks that are in place. It's important that these are not exacerbated or made worse. I would also draw members' attention to the risks posed by land contamination. This site was previously used as a petrol filling station. The presence of fuel petrol tanks on the site, these have now been removed, I understand, but the risk of contamination is something that should be taken into account. I would also draw the committee's attention to the principle of loss of employment. While the car sales site has now been demolished, there is a history of commercial enterprise on the site. I would link this to the previous expression of an interest by an individual in opening a shop on this site. Clearly this would result in the loss of this opportunity were the site to be developed as proposed. So to conclude, Mr. Chairman, while I don't object to the principle of developing this site per se, that does not mean that we should simply approve any planning application that is brought before this committee. I have cited several serious concerns regarding this application, which I believe show that it is unsuitable for a development of this nature. I therefore urge the committee to reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. We have another speaker as well. That's Mr. Rhys-Jones, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant as an agent. Mr. Jones, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair, Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rhys-Jones of LRM Planning. I'm addressing you this afternoon as the applicant's planning consultant. I intend to use the time you've kindly allowed me to set out clearly why this proposal for 30 affordable homes is a positive, sustainable and policy compliant proposal that you are able to support. I will focus on 3 key points before concluding my presentation. These are why car parking provision is acceptable, why flood risk is fully addressed and safely managed, and why this scheme provides urgently needed affordable homes. We have noted that car parking is one of the main sources of objection. 26 spaces have been provided to facilitate the 30 residential units. National and local policy allow reductions in car parking where development is located in a sustainable location and where active travel can realistically replace short trips. Within 200 metres of the site, there are bus stops on both sides of the road. Additionally, the parking SPG provides maximum parking standards, not minimum requirements, and Planning Policy Wales states that planning authorities must support schemes which keep parking levels down. The Highway Authority has applied these policy positions and confirmed that 26 parking spaces is acceptable and confirmed they offer no objection to the development. Similar concerns have been raised about flood risk. Members should be reassured by the clear findings of the Flood Consequences Assessment, or FCA, which confirms that the development will not increase flood risk elsewhere. Crucially, the lead local flood authority have reviewed the FCA and do not object to the development on flood risk or surface water drainage grounds. Finally, and most importantly, I must use my time to draw attention to the fact that this development helps address one of the Vale of Glamorgan's and indeed Wales's most pressing challenges, the acute shortage of affordable housing. The need for housing is laid bare in the response from Housing Strategy at the foot of page 87 of the committee report. When consulted in October last year, they advised that there are 162 households on the waiting list for one-bedroom homes in Llandough alone, with one-bedroom homes representing the most needed household size in the area. When consulted again in March of this year, in only 5 months, an additional 24 households had been added to the waiting list, with the need now at 186 one-bedroom homes. Providing 30 high-quality, affordable homes in this location will make a genuine and immediate difference to residents in need, and the applicant is committed to securing a registered social landlord for the proposal, as secured by Condition 3. To conclude, Chair, Members, the application before you has no objections from any statutory consultees, addresses parking and flooding concerns with robust professional evidence, and importantly, helps local people who urgently need housing. I respectfully encourage members to follow their officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I mistakenly moved on too quickly and should have asked whether any members of the committee had any points of clarification for Councillor Carroll.
I do.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your presentation, Councillor Carroll. You made a question about and you questioned the accidents. And I just wonder if you can substantiate your claims about accident data within the area adjacent to the plan application.
There are serious concerns regarding the road safety at the top of Llandough Hill. These have been documented by the police. I don't have the accident data to hand. This is a well-documented issue, and concerns have also been raised regarding the road narrowing.
Thank you. As you know, I've got another hat here. If you could send me any information, as you know, I'm the relevant cabinet member for this, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Councillor Buckley, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, George. Two questions from me. You said that this development is equal to 100 dwellings per hectare and it's higher than the minimum of 30. I thought it was supposed to be higher than the minimum that was set. And also, where you're on about the Llandough Hill Junction, the parking along there is terrible, but that's got to be 400 metres from this site. And it's my understanding there's double yellows on the corner. So can you clarify how you think this site will make the parking a bit worse? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. To deal with your points in turn, the first one regarding the minimum, I accept that it's higher than the minimum. It was used to demonstrate my point that I believe the density is excessive given the site and the pressures that this will place on both infrastructure and public services. With regard to your second point, there aren't at present double yellow lines on that junction. It is something that I and many residents have been campaigning for vociferously. 400 yards isn't far from the site to me. The issue you have with displacement parking means that any capacity that is taken up by this will push the problem further down and add to it. We've already had issues with more and more people using the hospital site, meaning that this problem is progressively getting worse, and anything that is going to add to that by putting more cars into the on-street parking areas is going to be a problem.
Councillor Buckley, you still have your hand up. Is that a further point of clarification?
No, it was just, it's a legacy hand, and thank you, Councillor Carroll.
Councillor Charles, do you have a point of clarification?
No, it's not clarification. I'll speak later. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. In that case, do we have any points of clarification from Mr. Jones, who spoke after Councillor Carroll? Councillor Cow.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You spoke about the parking provision, and some of the houses will be bigger than others. Will there be allocated parking for each accommodation, or will it be, you know, first come, first served kind of thing?
I understand that it won't be allocated for specific flats, so it'd be first come, first served.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see no other points of clarification for either of our speakers, so thank you very much, gentlemen. Moving on, Steve, do you have anything you wish to contribute at this time?
Steve's not online. I'll be able to.
All right.
No, I am back online now, fortunately. I'm happy, obviously, Councillor Carroll's raised lots of issues, so, and maybe members also raise the same issues, so I'm happy to maybe come back collectively on all of the issues together, if that's okay.
Okay.
This time.
Okay, I'll call you in at the end to sum up. In that case, we now move on to the discussion. So any members of the committee who have any comments or queries that they want to raise? Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. In principle, I'm not against this housing, but I am very, very concerned for the people that will have to live in these houses and live in that particular area. I totally agree with everything, as you would imagine, that Councillor Carroll has already said. But when you talk about parking And in the report, you actually say that due to reports on other social housing, that you allocate 0.7% of cars to that type of housing. I believe that maybe this report is outdated, because I think that you will find that there will be more cars living in those houses, especially as the bus services and everything else that goes with it to help these people move around and get to work are not as they should be. Somebody has expressed an interest to build business on this premises, and it is a fact that, especially in the report, it does say that it was allocated, should be kept and allocated as a business premise. And as Councillor Carroll has just said, that people have expressed an interest in opening a business there, well, with regard to work, etc., for people in that area. I think that is a serious consideration that should be taken into consideration. Also going back to the parking spaces, I really feel that people will end up parking on the main road, which is undoubtedly going to cause a lot of problems and also be quite dangerous. And you talk about there's going to be some degree of disturbance. Well, I think that's understated. I think there'll be a lot of disturbance for those people living on the front there. And I also feel that although you said the noise category falls within category C, and that this category will be addressed, and the housing will be put so that it will be, the noise will be reduced. But this also means to me that they won't be able to open any windows. Special measure means that this could go ahead, but as I say, windows will not be able to be opened. Has there been any land testing on the site where the petrol over the years is, because that garage was there for donkey's years, actually seeped into the ground? Has there been an environmental test of the soil? Because I couldn't read anything about that in the report. I mean, I am concerned, as we always are, about all the buildings that are going up these days with regard to drainage and flooding. With all the builds that are going on, it is a problem. And I would just like to urge people to have further look into this report. And so therefore, I won't be voting for this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Councillor Ernest, your hand is up next.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Could I say firstly that I totally agree with Councillor George Carroll, the local member. He's very competently put the points that I'm sure have been put to him very forcefully. I think this is a gross overdevelopment. It's simple as that. Squeeze as many units on to a very small site as you can. The applicant has aimed to do this. The graphics look very nice, very pretty, but the reality is that the site is going to be totally filled up with buildings. And as to the lack of as for amenity space, there appears to be a total lack of amenity space. I do not call a strip of grass in front of my front door as amenity space. I look for X square meters for myself and X square meters for all the other residents who will be in the 30 affordable flats. So I think amenity space has been quietly overlooked, and this is where this council needs to be much more strict in its application of the need for amenity space for the families who will be living there. I agree that the parking is inadequate. If there are 30 units and 26 car spaces, my reckoning is if there are 30 units, there'll be around about 40 cars there. I know many other affordable housing developments. They've happened all over the Vale, and time again, we've seen cars parked on pavements, cars blocking entranceways if people have a garage, none in this case, but parking is inadequate. I question what is affordable. Affordable housing these days is a little bit of a laugh, particularly in the Vale of Glamorgan, where the average price of a house probably is in the region of £300,000. So what is the affordability? That's for the developer to answer, not for me to answer. There is talk about bus links. Now, to the best of my knowledge, the only bus that goes through this part of Llandough is the 95 from Barry, or maybe Barry Island, I'm not sure, but from Barry to Cardiff. I suspect most of these residents will want to go to Penarth to shop. They may want to go down to the Leckwith trading estate possibly, but I bet many of them will want to shop in Penarth because they'll have a Penarth address and get their mail from there. And again, you know, if they've got to go and pick up a parcel that hasn't been delivered, they'll have to track into Penarth. There won't be a bus. They'll either have to get a taxi or use one of the 40-odd cars I've just been talking about. I think the scheme is unsustainable, taking into account all the various factors. We needn't go through those. It's detailed, well detailed in the officer's report. But my view is the scheme is sustainable. And lastly and finally, Chairman, what are the public services provided in Llandough? Let's count them on one hand. We've got a shop, we've got a pub. What's number 3, number 4, number 5? I really can't think. Shop and a pub, maybe? There's a hospital, but I don't count a hospital as being a public service in the accepted sense of the word. A hospital is a district-wide facility, and Councillor George has been very outspoken, and I can support what he says about parking on the main road all the way through Llandough throughout the working day. So, Chairman, I'm afraid that I also join my colleague, Councillor Charles, in opposing this application, and I think I've given the reasons why I oppose it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Steve, you want us to come back in?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, obviously, just like to pick up on Councillor Carroll's points, Councillor Charles's points, and Councillor Ernest's points. So, in no particular order, just on the density, I mean, it's quite correct. The density has been calculated as being approximately 100 dwellings per hectare, whereas the minimum density, obviously, you emphasise the word minimum, would be 30 dwellings per hectare. Nevertheless, obviously, there is a drive of where you have a site that is appropriate for residential development. You maximise opportunities to develop that site the best way that you can. In this case, it's a brownfield site. It's a site in the middle of a site within a settlement boundary. So, you know, every effort should be made to make efficient use of that land. I mean, as the report says at bottom of page 103, high density requirements are not necessarily unacceptable, but you need to look at the impact of that high density on the character of the area. In this instance, as you've seen in front of you, we're not talking a multi-story building. We're just talking 2-story flats, which have the appearance of dwellings. I wouldn't say it necessarily feels that it has that level of density. To some degree, the density is only triggered by the size of the site and not necessarily by the units you look at. So if, for example, it had a bigger parking area, the density would actually be reduced. So I think that the figure doesn't actually represent how the character of the site itself. So if they density, you know, we are happy with that figure. Certainly we've had many sites with significantly greater density than that. In terms of parking, obviously, you know, we are aware that this has been an issue. It's the number one concern with local residents, obviously echoed from the member, local member as well. So obviously the application was supported by a transport statement. I mean, it is fair to say that the transport statement has looked at average car ownership of affordable houses and has come up with that 0.74 figure, which in fairness has been used then to prorata the parking provision at the site. So again, we have to emphasise that the standards set out in the SPG are the maximum that can be asked for. It shouldn't be seen as the starting point to reduce from. The parking requirement is what the highway engineer thinks, but the most he can ask for would be the maximum standards. So again, Councillor Ernest raised concern about the absence of amenity space or full provision of amenity space. In this instance, it's always that balance between getting the right level of parking and securing the right level of amenity space. In this instance, we feel that that provision of 26 spaces is an acceptable provision. The highway engineer has not objected to that. Nevertheless, we are aware that there are issues with parking, particularly related to the hospital along the main road. So one of the requirements set out in the condition is that there is a traffic regulation order along the adjacent highway network. There is what's called a gramping type condition where the developer would need to ensure that that traffic regulation order is finalised and in place before the houses can be occupied. We don't know the extent of that order yet in terms of how far along the road it would go, but it would certainly, I would imagine, be along the site frontage. And possibly beyond. That would obviously prevent any parking or dangerous parking, certainly along this section of the road. In addition to that, there's also the provision of a uncontrolled crossing point, which again will facilitate active travel and walking routes across the site. I mean, to some extent, this site is very similar to the site on the other side of the road, which members also supported. And this really is the mirror to that site, albeit with different levels and different levels of density. So I think hopefully whether members are satisfied that the parking issue has been addressed, but as I say, officers feel that the reduced number is in line with the evidence that we have in terms of average car ownership. So just running past drainage, the agent in his presentation made reference to the fact that the FCA demonstrates that the proposal wouldn't cause unacceptable flooding or surface water flooding in terms of flood risk, etc. Just picking up on Councillor Charles's comments, and I think Councillor Carroll as well, about the petrol station and the fuel. There are 4 conditions in total regarding contamination. So I think, whilst we believe that those tanks have been removed, that doesn't necessarily mean that any contamination that is in the ground as a result of the tanks has been removed. So hence there are 4 conditions in total that require a detailed scheme of effectively remediation to bring the site back into
Hi, Stephen.
I would say officers have looked at that. And
Stephen, Ian's going to take over while you perhaps reconnect. Okay. If you come off screen for a second, Ian will come on.
Thanks. Thank you. I'll try and predict what Steve was going to say. I think the matters are adequately covered by conditions. They're the kind of conditions which are kind of really belt and braces in terms of submission of information before, before substantive works to implement the consent, and that will adequately protect the position in regard of the environment and contamination. Those submissions will need to be sent to SRS, potentially NRW if necessary. So I think we'd be very confident that those things protect our position on that point.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Wilson, you had your hand up next.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I thank you for the comments so far. I'm just going to answer some of the comments that have been made by certain members. As far as I know prior to 1979 that Llandough was in the community of Penarth. But in 1979, Llandough declared UDI. I'm not saying they like Rhodesia, by the way. And clearly that's what happened. So Llandough is its own community, which I'm sure Councillor Carroll will testify. that's a little side point. The main points, though, to me, the thrust of it is on page 102 in particular. You look at 102 and you look at the demand for housing in the community of Llandough. We see a grand total of 295 possible dwellings, including 186 one-bedroom properties. That's a huge demand. And it's probably one of the biggest demands of any housing in any community within the Vale Glamorgan, given the size of Llandough. And I think that's an important consideration. The other point you mentioned about density, yes, I take your point, but clearly people living in low-cost housing do have to put up with low density. I'm not saying it's right, but myself came from a council block myself on the 4th floor, and clearly, you know, it is highly intensive. But equally though, you got somewhere to live. And it's better to live there than finding you living in very overcrowded conditions, as many of our constituents suffer from. So I think we need to put that into context. And I think lots of us as local members deal with people living in very overcrowded conditions. There is a bus service. Obviously, we need to improve that, but there is a bus service available. We're not that far away from the centre of Llandough. There are shops in Llandough, admittedly in the hospital, but there are shops that you can use. You know, people can, and there's no emission issues. You can get in and get out. You know, that's something that is worth considering. And also to make them more viable, it would be great for more and more people to use those shops in Llandough as well. Clearly, we also need to consider this application, not anything that could happen there. We can only consider what's in front of us. You know, there may be other people who might be interested, but they haven't come forward. We're looking at the application as it is now. It's also in the settlement boundary, and that's important as well. We're not expanding the area of Llandough, nor are we building on greenfield sites as well. It's a brownfield site. It also works very well with the left-hand side of the development that's already there. The right-hand side, I think, will complement it and will make it very consistent as well, and less incongruous as it is at the moment. So I'm happy to move the officer's report, bearing in mind the amended conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Steve, you wanted to come back. I'm glad to see you back online.
Yes, apologies for my network connection. I don't know how much Ian possibly filled in, but I think Councillor Wilson has given a good summary appraisal, really, of the scheme from our point of view, and the support that officers are giving it in relation to the fact it's just a very logical use of a site for 100% affordable housing, which equally could be used for market housing. So the fact it's affordable is something we want to try and deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Perry, you have your hand up.
Yeah, here I am. Good afternoon. Yeah. So after the recent election results, I hope we do get some better guidance on planning from the Senedd, because this site, again, I question its sustainability and the fact they're reliant on one bus service and knowing the area and the gradients around it. It's not very easy to reach services by foot or by bicycle, and the bus service, as Anthony said earlier, isn't the best. And apparently you can go to Penarth, it goes to Dinas Powys and Barry. The old 1980s bus services, the 307, 308, are no longer with us, unfortunately. So the actual location in terms of sustainability is suspect, and we should be putting in the infrastructure and the services before we put in the new housing. And the density of housing, you know, on the continent, that they're building affordable housing, which is A, affordable, and B, that people really want to live in, as opposed to we're building small little boxes just to tick a box because we sound great, because we've built social housing, how fantastic we are, and then the people move in and stay on the housing list because they want to move somewhere which is more suitable for humans to habitat. So that's sort of my thought on that. I'm not going to cover things other members have covered, but no one's mentioned the S106. Now, this is supposed to be affordable housing. The affordable housing doesn't contribute S106, yet we've been told there's £11,000 for a sustainable transport, and there's other S106 money coming from it. Now, I know full well that when the negotiations start, if it's not going to be a social housing provider, there will be the little test that comes along, and it won't be financially viable for them to pay the S106. I know it, the officers know it, and we're just kidding ourselves that we'll be getting any S106 from this. So I don't know why that was even mentioned, because it ain't going to happen. The Vale of Glamorgan Council is itself a provider of housing, so why isn't the Vale of Glamorgan Council looking at this site? Do they also fear it's not actually financially viable and therefore are not going to get into negotiations with the owner? So I think it's another false promise that's been made, and it is a difficult one because our planning policy perhaps is on balance in favour of it, but I think we're being some sort of a bit of misleading going on here. So I will join my colleagues here who are opposed for various reasons to this project. And for the developer, it's unfortunate, but I think the people in the Labour Party will just tick a box because they don't live there themselves, don't particularly, look for the future. And I'm looking at the future, and I'm not happy with what we live in now, and we ain't changing in Wales. I just hope the new administration, the Senedd, actually looks at planning and we get better planning policies, better leadership from the top. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Ian Robinson, you want to comment?
Thanks, Chair. Just firstly, to just be absolutely clear about sustainability, the settlement boundary for Llandough is part of the existing LDP, which is part of an adopted and approved plan, been through plan examination years ago, and that settlement boundary reflects the kind of the physical envelope of Llandough, but the presence of it indicates a level of sustainability to that settlement that's been through examination, and we have policies accordingly which say that within a settlement boundary, a site is acceptable in principle for residential development. It's extremely difficult to argue that essentially the settlement boundary for Llandough is wrong. That would be kind of what you'd be saying if you're saying the site isn't sustainable. If I may, just on the second point, I'd like to go on record as taking issue with the suggestion that officers are knowingly presenting something to not be the case. I'll give Councillor Perry the benefit of the doubt that he's not accusing officers of deliberately misleading committee. I would like to reiterate that officers assess things fairly. You may or may not agree with the presented case, but I want to vouch for the veracity of the information we're providing. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, and I think it's a point well made. Eddie Williams. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to the discussion so far. I'm content with the evidence that's provided in the report. I recognise there are different views. The fact it's within a settlement, there are considerations as far as the parking and everything else. I'm happy to second the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did have a point of clarification a long time ago, but that's passed. So I wanted to just say about the affordable housing element of it, that in terms of long term, my connection was lost briefly, so I hope I haven't missed part of that discussion. But change of use or ownership of the building long term, what happens about that? Can it switch from affordable housing? Those are the kind of things that I would want to look in terms of sustainability for the tenants or residents of those flats. So I wondered long term, how can it change in terms of planning, or these are the only conditions that can kind of be there?
I'll ask Steve Butler to respond to that. But Helen, if you missed part of the discussion, you will not be able to vote when we come to the vote. Steve.
Yeah, so obviously just perhaps picking up on Councillor Perry's point, there's still within Section 106 and also planning condition that it's affordable housing as defined by Welsh Government, etc. And obviously that would then be delivered by the councils, the partner RSLs, or the council itself. Obviously, the function of those affordable housing deliverers, if you want to call them that, are kind of ring fenced, and it's difficult to comment, but I can't see how they could then sell those on the market. Not to say it hasn't happened many years ago, but it would be no different to any other application that we have by a named RSL on the application, where, for example, it could then be built up by an alternative RSL. So the fact that an RSL is not actually named wouldn't provide us with any kind of weaker position, because say the 106 is going to be very, very robust. And again, we are securing some planning obligations, albeit based on 5 units on the basis that there is relief for 25 units as set out in our SPG. So just to pick up on Councillor Perry's point, it's not misleading. Obviously, we can't prevent any new planning application coming in for the site by another developer, but based on this consent, if approved, will be linked and controlled by that Section 106 agreement, delivering 100% affordable and those identified planning obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Perry, you have your hand up. Hopefully this is to apologise for what was tantamount to a breach of the code.
Excuse me, Chair, can you not? No, that's not acceptable. Sorry.
You will listen. You will listen. You will listen, or I'll have you thrown off the meeting. You will either listen, or I'll have you thrown off the meeting.
Criticism isn't acceptable,
What you said. Can you stop when I'm speaking, please? What you said earlier was tantamount to an allegation of misconduct by our officers, which is tantamount to a breach of the Code of Conduct. I assume you wish to apologise for that.
That's why I'm clarifying it, Chair. That's why I've come back, and you're being rude, not letting me speak and make the clarification.
I've not said I'm not letting you speak. You are arguing with me in public. Will you please stop?
I think you need to be argued with.
No, it is rude and it is a breach of the Code of Conduct again. Please stop and listen. I will let you speak when I have finished speaking.
You are reprimanding me in public.
No, when I have finished speaking, will you stop?
You are reprimanding me in public without allowing me to clarify what I said earlier, which is why I came back on to speak.
We've had a number of point of orders.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Pwll. I move that the councillor be not heard.
I'd like to second that.
That's been moved and seconded. We now go to a vote. We can go to a vote on that. That this member be not heard.
Chair, perhaps we need to get some legal advice first from our colleagues here.
Chair, for there to be a breach of the Code of Conduct, it'd have to go through the monitoring officer. Sorry, Councillor Wilson, you took...
Can I get clarification regarding the rules of debate, which is in the Constitution?
If you can give me a couple of minutes, and then I will come back to you.
In that case, while legal officer is considering the rules of debate, I propose a 2-minute or a 5-minute break while we get the clarifications. Thank you. Okay. So we up and running? Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Perry, could you come on screen, please? He is. He's not. Councillor Perry is no longer online, so I suggest we move on. Where we were at. We're about to go to, unless any other members of the committee wish to speak on this application that was interrupted, which is the Vale Car Sales Leckwith Road application. I see no hands in that case. Given that there's obviously been indication that there's a difference of opinion within the committee, I propose we go to a vote. This could be recorded, please.
You happy for me to start now?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that seconded by yourself?
Yeah,
it was seconded by Eddie Williams.
Yeah, okay. A recorded vote, Chair.
Recorded vote. Yes, that's been seconded by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, the vote is starting now, committee.
You're either voting for or against officers' recommendations.
Okay. All votes are in, Chair?
All votes are in. That's clearly carried.
Could you put it on the screen?
You put the votes on screen.
Right.
Thank you. We move on. What about the drink of water?
Councillor Payne.
Yes, sorry, my voting didn't come up at all, sorry.
Yeah, it would be, the reason being, Councillor, because you missed part of the debate.
Ah, right, okay.
You wouldn't be able to vote, I'm afraid.
Right, moving on then to our next application, which is 2026-00056 FUL, land at Hayswood Road, Sully, and Rob Blankshire, you're taking this.
I am, thank you, Chair. Could I have the slides up, please? Okay, just skip on a few to the right one, if possible. Perfect, thank you. Okay, as members will be aware, we've received matters arising, two of them, in fact, one from the agent and correspondence therein with regard to amended landscaping and other conditions relating to the construction environment management plan and the construction traffic management plan. So there's two revised plans in conditions 2 and 10. And also the construction environment management plan and construction traffic management plan conditions are now removed and part of the approved plan conditions instead, because that's been submitted and agreed pursuant to the report being produced. We've had a second matters arising note from a nearby occupier raising principally issues relating to trees, and these have also been addressed within the matters arising note, the officer report, and briefly in the officer report, the officer presentation coming up. So the site is known as land to the south of Hayswood Road, Barry, comprising approximately 1.92 hectares of undeveloped land. The site is adjoined for the north by existing, recently constructed dwellings on the opposite side of Hayes Road, to the west by Hayes Lane, and to the south and east by established protected broadleaf woodland. The site is currently allocated for employment uses in the Vale of Glamorgan adopted local development plan. Next slide, please. This is a photo taken looking northeast along Hayswood Road. So the application site here is on the right, enclosed by the palisade fencing. and the recently constructed development to the north of Hayes Road, shown to the left. So as you can partly see there, the application is largely grassland that drops from the southwest to the north of the site. Next slide, please. Just another couple of photos just for context of the site. The one on the bottom left provides a more direct view towards the site across the established woodland, providing a backdrop to the development site and obscuring views of the old Sully Hospital behind. And the other photo towards the top right of the slide in front of you shows the site from a roundabout on Hayes Road itself. You can just see the lodge building to the left of shot, and this area shown on here would be the area of open space proposed within the development, and partly the attenuation basin, which would be to the right-hand side of that. Next slide, please. Okay, so apologies for the slight split in the site layout plan here. It just it meant you could see more of what was going on within the screen. So the part of the layout shown on the right-hand side there is at the top of the apartment block there. Just shows the whole site in context, just so you can see everything in a bit more detail. So the proposal is for 70 affordable dwellings comprising a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom units. Access would be directly from Hayswood Road, and this would lead to an internal road and parking area serving about 94 spaces. A said attenuation basin and area of open space are shown to the north as per the right-hand side picture there. The report and subsequent matters arising are considered to provide a robust assessment of all planning related matters, but I'll touch on a few of the pertinent matters now. As noted in the officer report, the site is currently allocated for employment uses within the adopted LDP. Status has recently been reviewed, however, as part of the LDP review process, that whilst noting the site would be suitable for industrial development, is only a small percentage of that available, whilst also noting constraints that may limit its wider suitability for industrial uses, and hence it's been included within the deposit RLDP as a site for housing. Whilst in itself this allocation within the RLDP should be afforded little weight at this time, the evidence and consideration of related matters as detailed in more detail in the officer report are considered to weigh significantly in favour of the proposals. It is also considered proposals are compliant with the aims of relevant policies within the current LDP, such as policy MD10, which relates to affordable housing developments outside settlement boundaries, including its relation to the settlement boundary here, which is along the northern side of Hayswood Road. The existing residential development, which has recently been constructed in a couple of areas to the north. So there's a site you can see there in the slide, and there's also a further development that's been constructed to the west, and also the acute identified need for affordable housing within the area. Occupiers would have good access to services, including regular public transport and employment opportunities in neighbouring states. Despite tension, therefore, with its current allocation, it is considered that significant weight should be afforded to the aforementioned provisions, particularly the acute need for affordable housing, and officers consider that the site is an appropriate and sustainable site, for a development of this form. Can I have the next slide, please? Yes, so this is a street scene photo taken internally within the site, and as you can see there, the form of the development is broadly commensurate with those already on the northern side of Hayswood Road, and we provide a strong frontage. We just skip back one, have we? Sorry, go back to the other photo. Yeah, so on that one, that's the view along Hayswood Road of the proposed development, where you've got there is a strong frontage with low brick walls, build out details and general form of development, which is very similar to that which is on the other side of Hayswood Road, which I showed just now. Yeah, so that's as shown in that photo there. It provides a strong frontage to public domain, whilst the layout ensures good levels of natural surveillance in areas of amenity space. It's considered in design terms, the proposal represents a high quality form of development that would complement recently approved neighbouring sites. Similar to development on the opposite side of a road, the proposals will require a degree of upgraded glazing and mechanical ventilation to mitigate noise from the adjoining road at busy times and neighbouring industrial sites. The proposals would, however, allow openable windows for purge ventilation, and the council's shared regulatory services have confirmed their satisfaction. The proposals would ensure suitable living conditions for future occupiers. Next slide, please. As covered in the matters arising note, circulated for members' consideration, proposals are supported by substantial information demonstrating the proposals would not give rise to unacceptable impacts upon adjoining areas of woodland, with no trees proposed to be removed to facilitate the development or thereafter, and a robust landscaping scheme proposed, including ecotone planting to the woodland edge. Council ecologist nor Natural Resources Wales have raised any objection to proposed development, and the information provided in support of the application is considered to demonstrate that the development for much needed affordable homes and the adjacent protected woodland would be able to coexist harmoniously, as required by the relevant SPG and policies. The applicant has also confirmed to meet the relevant planning obligations associated with the development, subject to the exemption noted previously in the Leckwith case for the first 25 units to be excluded. Education contributions are included within that, obviously it's, but there are a high number of one-bed units. I think it's 44 proposed within the scheme. Noting all of the aforementioned and the content of the officer's report, officers recommend that members should resolve to approve the application. Members are, however, advised that owing to the proposals being for more than 10 residential units and the tension noted with the current employment policy of the adopted LDP, that should members resolve to approve, the local planning authority will have to notify Welsh Government and be prohibited from issuing planning permission until the expiry of a 21-day period following this notification, or if we receive word back from Welsh ministers before that, we can determine it sooner. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, it's not working. Thank you, Rob. As I indicated earlier, we have a number of speakers on this. The first speaker is Mr. Stradling, who is with us in the chamber, and Mr. Stradling, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for this opportunity to address the committee on behalf of the 550-odd residents of Hayes Point, the adjacent complex, which used to be the Sully Hospital. I accept that we need more houses in the Vale, and there are certainly worse places than Hayswood Road in which to build them. I strongly disapprove of NIMBYism and the hypocrisy that we so often see both in public life and on social media from those who purport to be in favour of housing, only to object on any grounds available, however spurious, when the plans affect their own community. That's not to say that community-related concerns about this development aren't valid. I know many of them are, but I'll leave others to make those points, which they have done over the last few months and years. To the 5 buildings in a row at the north side of the proposed development, I'm not sure if you can bring up the plans again, but to the 5 buildings in a row on the north side of the proposed development, I have no objection. Nor do I have any objection to the 2 small buildings in the northwest of the development. And doubtless, if the planners are told to redesign their proposals, which I think must happen for the reasons I will come to, there'll probably be space for 2 or 3 more buildings elsewhere in the field. However, almost all of the dwellings currently proposed at the south and the east side of the complex are in direct breach of the Vale of Glamorgan's own planning guidelines. 3 minutes is not enough to make my points fully, so I hope you'll have a chance to read my written submissions, which appear in the last 4, I think, pages at the back of the bundle, which include a link to those guidelines, the Vale of Glamorgan's planning guidelines, section 11 of which specifies the need for a 15-metre ecotone, a buffer, if you like, between the edge of existing woodland and any new landscaping. New landscaping is defined as not just buildings, but roads, paths and gardens. As you'll see from map VOG06 on my submissions, which is on the penultimate page of your bundle, most of the proposed dwellings on the south and east of the development encroach well into the 15-metre ecotone area, which is shaded pink on the map that I presented. And applying its own guidelines, the Planning Committee has no alternative but to reject the application as it stands. I very much hope the committee are not minded to ignore their own guidelines and to consider allowing the application as it stands, but in case they are, I should advise that this would not only be breaking their own guidelines, but it would also be breaking the law. The VOG 07 map on the following page of my submissions makes it clear that certainly 3, probably 4 of the dwellings in the southwest corner of the proposed development encroach within 15 metres, the area highlighted turquoise, of the land designated as ancient woodland. And to do this is quite simply illegal. A 15-metre ecotone must be observed between the edge of ancient woodland in Wales and any new landscaping. Now, not all of the woodland is classified as ancient woodland. You can see what isn't on my maps. But based on these plans, the ecotone in some or if not most areas would be no more than 5 or 6 metres. If the planning committee gives these plans the go-ahead, not only will they be destroying the root system of many ancient trees, but as my submission set out, they will be breaching not only their own guidelines, but also the law. Such a decision would be to roll out a red carpet for legal challenges, including, if necessary, a judicial review, which in all likelihood would be successful. Please treat with caution any response you might now hear, questioning the accuracy of the maps or my interpretation of the law. The maps are accurate.
Stradling, your time's
The maps are accurate and the law is clear. I would ask, please, councillors, to reject this application.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification for Mr. Stradling? Any members of the committee want to raise a point of clarification? I see no hands. Thank you, Mr. Stradling. Councillor Collins, you're next. You have 5 minutes as an elected member.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. As the local member for the Bendricks, I have concerns about this housing application, as I have previously explained in full council, at Barry Town Council planning, and at the pre-application consultation meeting. While I understand the need for housing in the Vale and support the building of it, I'm not convinced that this is the right site. There is no real infrastructure to support a growing community. You know that the Bendricks is a unique part of Barry on the south side of the docks, with housing alongside an industrial estate. As the docks is a private road, it's not officially open for pedestrians. The nearest train station is Cadoxton, which is a 3-mile walk away. Under the current timetable, buses don't run to the area for a 3-hour period in the late afternoon and don't run at all on a Sunday. Medical services are also a fair distance away in Sully, with a veterinary centre on Cardiff Road being closer than any GP or dentist. Many residents in the area have also asked me why these facilities aren't there and are not planned. There is no shop, no community gathering place. The pre-application consultation meeting was held at Castleland Community Centre in the centre of Barry, nowhere near the Bendricks, showing just how limited the options are. Without these services, it will be impossible to have any real sort of community feel to the area. And without proper access to public transport, this will be another car-dominated new estate without facilities. I recognise that there is Section 106 contribution from this development. However, Bendricks residents, current and future, need a proper assessment by the council of the area's needs, which are far greater than the pro-rata funding being offered. During the consultation, we also received concerns about the impact the development will have on the ancient woodland at site. Planning committee members today need to be assured that this development does not have a negative impact. If this application is approved today, then I would like to ask that there is a community needs assessment carried out as soon as possible to ensure the needs of the community are met, and also an assessment regarding the ancient woodland to make sure it remains protected and preserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Any points of clarification from members of the committee for? And I see no hands for that. In that case, thank you. What? Councillor Cope, if you come on screen, do you have a point of?
Yes,
is there a point of clarification?
No, Chair, I just wanted to support what Councillor Collins was asking for.
No. If it's not a point of clarification, it's the wrong time, Marianne.
Okay.
Thank you. We have one more speaker, and that's Andrew Freegard, who is the applicant or their representative. I believe he's speaking for the applicants. Mr. Freegard, are you there? Thank you. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Freegard.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair. I'm Andrew Freegard, the Council's Operational Manager for Housing Development, and I'm speaking in support of this full application for land south of Hayswood Road in Barry. It's our first scheme under the new housing partnership with Lovell. This proposal represents a high-quality development of much-needed new council housing in an area of clear and pressing housing need. Approval today would enable delivery at pace, helping meet the needs of the people of Barry and the wider Vale. Firstly, I'd like to recognise the comprehensive officer report before you. It confirms the application has been rigorously assessed and is recommended for approval, demonstrating that all material planning considerations have been fully addressed and comply with the relevant policy. Planning Policy Wales specifies that development plans and development management decisions should be based upon up-to-date local and sub-regional evidence. And whilst the site is currently allocated for employment use in the current LDP, there is already a substantial supply of employment land across the Vale, over 490 hectares. Importantly, this site has been promoted within the replacement local development plan as a housing site. The Council's own Housing Growth in Barry Report 2025 clearly supports this shift, highlighting changes in the area's character, including new nearby housing developments, constraints on employment uses, and critically, the significant and urgent need for the new affordable housing. Housing need is substantial. The 2023 Local Housing Market Assessment identifies a shortfall of 1,075 additional affordable homes each year. This scheme would make a meaningful contribution towards meeting that need. It is acknowledged that some concerns have been raised regarding the sustainability of the site and existing infrastructure. However, the site is in a sustainable location, having been identified as a housing site within the RLDP, and new residents would have good access to employment opportunities within the nearby industrial estate. Furthermore, regular bus services are available at Hayespoint and Bendrix that would provide access to services within the wider area. The development will also generate substantial financial contributions towards improving sustainable transport, as well as wider community benefits, including education provision, public open space, and local facilities as directed by officers. Concerns around noise, infrastructure, ecology have been considered, and are all approved by the Council's consultees, and they raise no objections, subject to the standard conditions. Impacts on nearby ancient woodland are avoided through thoughtful design, including a buffer of native planting to enhance biodiversity. This is clearly demonstrated in the tree protection plan and the landscaping plans that accompany the application. In summary, this is a much-needed, well-designed council housing scheme in a sustainable location, meeting a clearly evidenced housing need and supported by the council's officers. For these reasons, we respectfully ask that you support the recommendation and grant permission. Diolch and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freegard. If you just stay there while I check whether there's any points of clarification from members of the committee. Nick, Councillor Hodges had his hand up first.
Thank you, Chairman. I've heard a couple of times now, and especially from just Andrew there as well, about the RLDP. I was just wondering, how much weight are we to give to the suggestion that employment land has now been or can be accepted as housing land in the RLDP, when we have not yet barely debated the RLDP, yet alone not even accepted the RLDP?
I'm not sure that's a point of clarification for Mr. Freegard. It's a point to make it's a point to be made later in the debate, I think, if you don't mind. Councillor Buckley, you have your hand up. This is a point of clarification.
Yes, Chair, point of clarification. For Andrew, where he said that the pre-planned protection of the ancient woodland is within the plan for the site, does that contravene the legislation that the last speaker spoke about, or is there a slight misunderstanding somewhere?
No, I don't believe so. We've worked extensively and closely with the council's ecologists to identify the perimeter of the ancient woodland and to make sure that we've designed an ecotone and a buffer that not only protects the ancient woodland but also enhances biodiversity.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ernest, you have your hand up. Is this a point of clarification?
Well, Chairman, can I ask questions of Mr. Pwllgor, or has that been...
Only if it is based upon something he's already said. You can't bring in new matters.
Yes, it is. Yes,
that's a point of clarification. Then, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Pwllgor. Could you tell the committee what bus routes serve this part of the Bendricks, when they run, and what hours they run at?
I believe the 94 and the 88 serve this area. I think they run every 30, 60 and possibly 120 minutes. But apart from Sunday, as Councillor Collins previously pointed out.
Apart from Sundays? So
Yeah.
there's no transport on a Sunday to go to
I
football?
believe so.
Jordan. Right, thank you. And my second question is, can you tell the committee how this site is sustainable in your view?
In my view, how is it sustainable? Obviously, the evidence to support the sustainability of the site has already been researched, gathered, and assimilated in the Barry growth plan, and obviously then that's been.
Well, I put it to you, there are no shops in the area. There's no community hall in the area.
Councillor Ernest, this isn't the time for argument. This is the time for clarification on what Mr. Pwllgor said.
Precisely.
Yeah, but no. You're arguing with him about his reply. This isn't the right time for that. If you have that point to make, then you can make it in the debate afterwards.
I'm asking a question.
No, you're not. No, you're arguing.
I don't call questioning argument.
No. You're disputing what he said. If you can rephrase it as a question, that would be okay.
Well, can you, Mr. Pwllgor, can you tell the committee how you consider this site is sustainable?
You asked that and he answered it. You then started to argue about the lack of shops. That's where where it went wrong. The lack of shops and so forth that you are raising can be raised in debate afterwards.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Do we have any other members of the committee who wish to raise a point of clarification? I see no hands. In that case, can we go? Well, sorry.
No.
In that case, thank you, Mr. Pwllgor, for your time. Go back to Rob, then Rob Lancashire, to answer any points that have been raised by the speakers. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, I think Andrew's answered quite a lot of the questions I had, or quite a lot of the responses I had in terms of certain issues. Again, with regard to kind of the ancient woodland, an ecotone has been incorporated within the proposals. No trees are being removed. Obviously the scheme has been refined during the course of the development of it, and it's been supported by information including arboricultural reports and tree protection plans, which seek to demonstrate what the impacts of the proposals would be, which are found to be acceptable, including in discussion with the council ecologist. In terms of, I think it was Councillor Hodges was asking the question with regard to the employment land, and I think Ian probably has a bit to say about this than I do. My understanding is that obviously we have to have regard to what the updated evidence and what the updated findings are when we're looking at things. Obviously there has been evidence and things undertaken as part of the RLDP process. So yes, okay, it's not allocated yet. Yes, it's not allocated as a housing site yet. Those are valid points. I think what the evidence within the RLDP kind of employment paper says is that whilst this site may potentially be suitable for employment purposes also, it only makes up a very small part of it. It's not, I think it's 1% or less than. It's not needed for wider employment use necessarily. It's locationally well related to existing housing. And also, it would, because of the housing that has been permitted on neighbouring sites, it's already slightly encumbered by the type of uses that could go on there, particularly B2 uses, which would be likely more noise generating and polluting uses that that might not be suitable immediately adjacent to neighbouring properties. So I think that's the rationale behind certainly the potential allocation of it within the RLDP. But I do acknowledge the point that obviously there is limited weight you can give to an allocation in the RLDP at this time. Nevertheless, you know, in terms of access to services and things, I think it's acknowledged there is not a shop within 5 minutes of the site. You know, there is a shop within walking distance within Sully, which according to Google Street, I haven't walked this myself, but is 25 minutes away from the site. So there is a shop there, you know, that you can walk to Sully Primary School from the site. There are already services, school transport services to provide access to other schools within the Vale of Glamorgan that are provided from the site, and education have confirmed that. In terms of other access to other services, obviously there is an array of employment opportunities which, you know, that are available on the doorstep, and obviously services provided therein, which also provide opportunity. So, you know, I think, you know, and it's important to note, you know, as Mr. Freegard mentioned, with regard to the kind of the other work that's been done in terms of looking at Barry as a whole and the housing strategy that's been developed, that, you know, this site has been looked at in some depth already through that kind of process and through the RLDP process to consider its suitability. So I do think that, yes, okay, whilst there is not a shop immediately adjacent to it, you know, there are services, there are bus services, regular bus services, you know, from Monday to Saturday, certainly, that, you know, would assist in anybody living at this site gaining access to other services within the wider area, and also within walking distance of services not immediately adjacent to the site. So I think that's everything I have for now. But yes, I'm happy to come back again if necessary.
Thank you very much, Rob. I think, Ian, you have something to add to that, Ian Robinson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy and agree with everything Rob said. I just wanted to add a little bit about the RLDP, just so members are clear about the kind of the policy context that we're presenting this in. This recommendation isn't made because of the position of the RLDP. It's not made because the site appears in the deposit draft, which is being consulted on properly. That doesn't have weight to justify making the recommendation on that basis. Officers would be making this recommendation if the RLDP did not exist. It's the outcome of an assessment of what is considered to be in the planning balance the right use for the land. The up-to-date evidence which has been gathered to support the progression of the LDP is relevant insofar as it tells us what the current picture is in terms of employment land, and as Rob mentioned, it doesn't have a fundamental kind of role to play, you know, in the delivery of the council's employment objectives. I don't want to labour the point, just trying to make clear that we're not suggesting that members should afford weight to its status in the RLDP. This recommendation would be made in any case. On the matter of a shop, obviously I can't sit here today and tell you a shop will arrive off the back of this. In my view, there is scope for services in the area to be improved. I think there is scope for a shop to be delivered. We have employment policies which principally protect employment uses on allocated sites, but those policies allow a varied degree of uses, particularly where things are ancillary to the wider employment sites and serve them. So, for example, Sausage Revolution, which is a use that used to function on Atlantic Trading Estate, isn't a B use, but it was approved in the interests of having facilities to serve the employment site. In my view, it's reasonable to kind of bring in the same kind of thinking when you're looking at what is kind of the best planning of the area, what is the best mix of uses, that's appropriate in that policy context. So in my view, that there is likely to be scope for services to be delivered in the area. Again, I wouldn't want members to make a decision on the basis that there is categorically going to be X, Y, or Z delivered. But I think that's a reasonable context to kind of consider in the way that things might move forward after this decision. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Right. We've heard the speakers. We've heard our officers, it's time for members to debate if they wish. I see hands. Councillor Charles was hand up first.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, I'd like to thank Eddie Stradlin for all the work he's put into his proposals today. Also, Councillor Collins, I think you wrote my speech for me. It was brilliant. Thank you very much. You did name all the points. So I won't repeat it, but what I would like to say is, having lived in Barry and a Barry girl, I played in this ancient woodland lots and lots and lots of times growing up. And as far as I'm aware, children still play in this particular area. And I'm very concerned about the security that will be put up to secure the flats in the old Sully Hospital grounds. There will be congestion, is no doubt about it, leading from there. If it doesn't affect there, it's going to affect the other areas, which are really bad at the moment. But I'm concerned that although trees are not going to be removed, but they will be killed by killing the roots. I was looking at the map, and the pink area and the turquoise area, to me, looks about 3 to 5 metres, which is not suitable when you think of a 100-year-old tree and how far their roots go. These trees are going to die. There is one shop in Sully, which is a mile away. Their buses go from 8 till 4, 1 an hour, the 88. Then there's a 3-hour gap between 4 and 7 o'clock. There is no transportation. But between 8 and 11, there is one again every hour. As I say, between 4 and 7, there are none. I hope that you all take into account everything that's been said today. You know, there might be shops there, but at the moment, all we can say about that is it's pie in the sky. There again, you know, who's going to be making the money on this? Will we get 106? I don't know. All I'd like to say is, therefore, will you please treat with caution any response you might now, but that you've heard, and question the accuracy of these maps. I'm really concerned about the three, I don't know, it's 3 or 5 metres from the ancient woodlands, I couldn't tell. I would therefore respectfully ask the Planning Committee to refuse this application, and by all means to invite the planners to submit alternative proposals which are compliant with both the law and with the Vale of Glamorgan's planning guidance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Janice. The next hand I saw was Councillor Hodges.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a bit of a similar point. I've been on planning for some time now, but I do accept there are gaps in my knowledge on certain aspects. It's about the buffer. Is the buffer to the woodland the lawful distance? And if that is the case, if it's not, what is the scope for the variation under the law?
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Cave, your hand is up next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, so first of all, I'd like to concur with the comments just made by Councillor Charles, and I'd also like to second a motion that our planning officers look at this again with a view to refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Cave. Councillor Payne, your hand is up next.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to vote in favour of this much needed housing We have lots of people who are homeless. We have lots of families in need of housing in the Vale of Glamorgan. I too played in the woodland over the Bendricks, and the woodland will still remain. And I just wondered, why would we need security? We're not building affordable housing. We're not building a prison. We're building affordable housing. So, you know, there's some derogatory comments about the people that are potentially going to be living there, which I'm not happy about. So these are houses and homes for people in need of housing, as simple as that. And I, for one, am delighted that we're going to be building them there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Ernest is the next one with his hand up.
Chairman. Well, I've probably said much of what I was going to say anyway, but what concerns me, again, is basic lack of amenity space for the residents. It's all very well saying you've got woods nearby and there's land down the road and you've even got the sea a couple of 100 yards away, but people living in houses must have space to breathe. They must have space around them. I suspect some of them will have dogs now because the law now allows dogs in houses. They want to take their dogs for a walk in the area and so on and so forth. So whilst I'm not against the principle of development, my concerns remain about the total lack of transport and facilities and the fact that there is insufficient amenity space for the residents who are going to be placed there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Councillor Cowp, you have your hand up. Councillor Cowp.
Councillor Cowp, we got no audio video. There we are. Come on now.
Can you hear me?
We can now. Yeah.
Recommendations on page 107 about 106 funding, yes, is that we will get 106 funding. I just wanted assurance about that. And I'm just wondering if committee would be happy if we could put something in about the distance of the woodland just to reassure us. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowp. Hopefully our officers, Rob Lancashire, can address that in his reply now, unless there are any other comments from members of the committee. Councillor Wilson wants to, and then I'll call on Rob.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to second what Councillor Payne, but I want to make a couple of points there. If people read page 167, the Council's Heritage Officers notes the screening benefits adjacent woodland with regard to Grade 2 listed former Sully Hospital, and notes the woodland will not be directly impacted as a result of development and is considered to be sufficient to preserve the character of this building. So I think, to me, that's in a nutshell, and that's our Heritage Officer, and I think they do have regard to the heritage of buildings and also the heritage of the area. So, you know, I'm happy to support that. I think other points to consider, and I think Councillor Payne made it very well. And also, it's in the report about the huge demand of housing within the castle landlord. And I think, you know, again, we got the same kind of issues that we do have in Llandough. Clearly a big need for social housing. But also the third point I like to make was a different point. It's obviously, if this development does go ahead, it's more likely to make more and more community facilities more viable, including a shop. I think that could well happen. Clearly, I mean, I know the officer in Robinson did make reference to the Sausage Revolution, but nevertheless, there is a site there which potentially could be used. I think clearly this is something that could be viable and also be more likely that we'll get better bus services as well. So I'm happy to second Councillor Payne's move for officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Rob Lancashire, would you like to come back on the comments that he made?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having some connection issues here, so I've missed quite a few of the bits that have just been discussed. So I don't know whether, yeah. But anyway, I mean, in terms of the ancient woodland, I mean, I'm not quite sure what the legislation being quoted is, this kind of 15-meter buffer. I know that is mentioned within our SPG document. I am satisfied, however, as I've mentioned already before, that, you know, the impacts on the adjacent woodland have been fully considered within the application. the site layout plan does show a 15-metre ecotone and buffer to the ancient woodland itself, which I think is sufficient. And really would reiterate the point that, you know, this has been formulated in conjunction with, you know, as Mr. Freegard said, the council's ecologist, and with, you know, detailed arboricultural impact, you know, information being provided, including the root protection areas being surveyed and mapped by a qualified arboriculturalist. So I would just like to kind of assure members that the impacts have been considered, you know, fully in determining this. So yeah, I would say that. And obviously, just as a last point, you know, as has been mentioned, you know, there is an acute need for affordable housing. This is a, you know, this is a good site for it. It's a good scheme. It's well designed scheme, and hence why officers are recommending it for approval. So thanks ever so much. Cheers.
Thank you, Rob. I believe there's no more contributions from members of the committee, so we can. It's obvious that there is some difference of opinion amongst the committee, so we will go to a vote, hopefully a recorded vote, please.
Chair, can I just double check? Councillor Cave alluded to a motion, seconding the motion previously. Yeah, but something that Councillor Charles raised. I just want to confirm if there is a motion or not before we vote on obviously Officer Rex.
Not so much a motion as I just wanted to emphasise that people should really heed to what is being said and vote against this. Can I also say that when I said security, what I was referring to was that it is right next to a large piece of private land which needs to be fenced. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you very much for clarifying, Janice. That's what I took you to mean, rather than putting a motion. No, the only motion we have before us is Helen Payne and seconded by Councillor Wilson.
Thank you.
And now my one about recorded vote.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just want to double check before we went through, Chair. So are you happy to start the vote now?
Yes.
Right.
Is it seconded for recorded?
So
was it seconded for recorded as well, Chair?
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor, thank you, Vice Chair.
Yeah, so in favour of officer's recommendation is 4, and obviously against is against. That's all votes are in. Thank you very much. That's.
Shall we put on the recorded votes, Chair?
Yes, please. That's carried.
You have to put a recorded one, yeah.
Right, that concludes our business for today. Thank you all very much, and see you at the next meeting, which is.
Can you just confirm there's no urgent item?
I have no urgent items, no, and there's around about 2. So we are done with business except for
next meeting's the 18th of June.
18th of June.
Chair.
See you then. Hopefully with better weather.
Thank you.